Ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and call today's meeting to order. This is the April 26, 2022 meeting of the Laughlin Town Advisory Board here at the Laughlin Regional Government Center, 101 Civic Way in Laughlin, Nevada. For some housekeeping items, I'll read into the record. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order, and the board may combine two or more agenda items for consideration. The board may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relating to an item at any time. No action may be taken on any matter not listed on today's posted agenda. All planning and zoning matters at this meeting are forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners Zoning Commission, known as the BCC, or the Clark County Planning Commission, PC, for final action. Please take a moment to mute or turn off all cell phones or other electronic devices you may have with you. And please take all private conversations outside of the room here today. Within 48-hour advance request, a sign language interpreter or other reasonable efforts to assist and accommodate persons with physical disabilities may be made available by calling 702-455-3530, TDD at 702-385-7486, or Relay Nevada toll-free at 800-326-6868. Supporting material to the board members for this meeting may be requested from our Secretary, Tammy Harris, at 702-298-0828, and supporting material is or will be available at the Clark County Department of Administrative Services in Las Vegas, Nevada. Supporting material will also be available at the Clark County website, clarkcountynv.gov/Laughlin TAB. Also, I believe there are some article or some information at the back of the room if you'd like to avail yourself of that as well. Your board before you today, and I'll go ahead and do a roll call at this point. We have Pamela Walker. Present. Herm Walker, no relation.
Here.
Present. Fred Doughton is not present today. Kathleen Haas, Vice Chair.
Here.
And myself, Kathy Oakes, as Chair. So we have 4 members, and we do have a quorum. Our secretary today is Tammy Harris, and she can be reached at 702-298-0828, or her email is Tammy, TAMMY, .harris, at clarkcountynv.gov. Our county liaison is with us today, and that is Mark Moskowitz, and he can be reached at 702-298-0828, and also at 702-455-6173. His email is markmoskowitz, MARK.MOSKOWITZ, at clarkcountynv.gov. So we've called this meeting to order, and we've had our recall. I'll ask you to stand for our invocation, led by Pastor Doug Wesley, and our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Herm Walker.
Sure.
Well, according to what the Bible says, everything on this planet is owned by God himself. Even we are. Even though we like to consider the properties to be ours, it's all his. In all due respect to the owners of the properties over here talked about today, it's still all his. This building, I always say, belongs to the taxpayers of Laughlin, right? Or does it belong to Clark County? The taxpayers of Laughlin. But ultimately, this building is owned by the creator of the universe. Well, anyway, today my prayer is that things go well today with this discussion. This has been going on a long time. And I know the people at Edison, they're good people. I've met them all. I've talked to them all. I've enjoyed meeting each one of them. So I just pray that today's meeting goes well today, and that with all of you can just kind of figure things out with the plans, uncover things that maybe you're not comfortable with, talk about those things you're not comfortable with, have a real good discussion between all the parties involved. You're all good people here. Everybody here wants the same thing, and that's to do what's right and do what's peaceful and what's proper for the people of Laughlin. Lord, please bless this proceeding and everybody here. These are good people. that all want the same thing. May you bless them, give them the love that you have for them, to overwhelm them with your love and your kindness. In the name of Jesus, amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, we will now open to the public comment section of today's agenda. And this is a period devoted to comments by the general public about items on this agenda that we have before us today. No discussion, action, or vote may be taken on the agenda item at this time. You will also be afforded the opportunity to speak on individual public hearing items at the time they are presented. If you wish to speak to the board about items within its jurisdiction but not appearing on today's agenda, you must wait until the comments by the general public period listed at the end of today's agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, so please step up to our speaker's podium, state your name and address, and spell your name for the record. It's easier for our secretary as these meetings are recorded. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of a presentation or comment by the public, that will be done by either the chair of the board or the board by majority vote. So at this time, we are open to public comment on items that pertain to today's agenda. So if there's anyone that would like to speak on items about today's agenda at this public comment section. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and move forward to today's approval of the agenda for April 26, 2022, to hold, combine, or delete any items. So I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have
Second.
a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Your motion carries 4-0. Today's agenda is approved. Informational items will begin with our South County liaison, Mark Moskowitz, for updates about the community.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 quick updates. I want to remind everyone next Wednesday, May 4th, in this room from 9 to 1, we'll have Nevada Legal Services as well as business license in the building. So it's a great opportunity to get face-to-face interaction with both of those services, Nevada Legal Service and business license. So please come. No appointment necessary, or you can call them in advance and get them documentation. And we also we have our kiosk out there as well. So if anyone needs to get any documents in the clerk recorder, we've got that here. And then on the back table, we've got lots of flyers of upcoming events. And please contact our office and Tammy if you'd like to be put on our email blast list. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And now we'll move forward to item 5 on today's agenda, which is planning and zoning. Before us will be WS-22-0166, Southern California Edison Company and City of Los Angeles. This is for a waiver of development standards for the following: 1, roadway dedication, and 2, restrictive covenant for a decommissioned electrical generating station on approximately 2,500 acres in an M2 industrial zone, generally located to the southeast corner of Needles Highway and Bruce Woodbury Drive within Laughlin. This is for possible action, and our decisions here will be forwarded to the PC on 5/17/2022. And if I do have the applicant to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Bob Steens. I am with Southern California Edison, and it's been I can't remember, it's been probably about 3 or 4 years since I've been here. I remember at least a couple of the board members, so it's glad to be back out in Laughlin. We do have some of our other team members here. We've got Devlin, and I'm going to try and pronounce this, Dan Eschforuz with NVE, Richard Fukukawa, also with Southern California Edison, Keith Spencer, who's with our broker, CBRE, and Jay Kruger, who is with our land use surveyor who's produced all these maps, and he's with a firm called Towell. So we all understand, all of us here understand the community's desire to see Mojave generating station land built and developed, and we share that desire. We acknowledge it's been a long process and wish it could have been completed sooner. However, given the complexity of the sale with multiple co-owners, multiple agencies requiring approval and COVID, unfortunately it's taken this long, but we are happy to, again, I think we've mentioned it in the past, but we do have a buyer identified and who has submitted offers, and we have backup offers. However, until we finalize the purchase and sale agreement, and this action in front of you today is an important part of that, we can't comment on, can't divulge developer's name, or can't discuss the buyer's plans for the site. However, I can say the developer is a local entity with extensive Clark County experience and is looking forward to working with the community to understand their vision for the ultimate use of this site. We're finalizing what's called the purchase and sale agreement, and expect to be in escrow this summer. At that time, we'll be happy to come back out and introduce the purchaser to the community. But before that purchase and sale agreement is completed, the co-owners are seeking a waiver of development standards, including road dedications and restrictive covenants, to proceed with the subdivision map review that is needed for the sale. The buyer will, in their entitlement process, include road dedications and other planned community details within the development agreement and subdivision maps. So approval of this waiver is necessary to legally define a revised map, what is being transferred to the buyer, and what will then be, who will then file a major development plan based on the new map. So we're happy to take any questions, but again, we're unable to discuss, to divulge the buyer's name at this time, or discuss their ultimate use of the site. But as I said, as soon as this is approved and then approved by the Planning Commission, and then ultimately when the purchase and sale agreement is approved, we're happy to bring the developer out and introduce them to the community. So with that, I'm happy to take questions, and I've got our team of experts here to answer questions that I cannot.
Okay, there will be, is there going to be presentation from the other individuals,
No.
or are they simply here to answer questions?
They're here to answer questions.
Okay, so I think just to make it a fluid format, have the questions from the board answered, or not answered, but addressed, and then the public.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can have, I would say the board ask their questions first, and then
Right.
they can answer those, and then we can open it to public comment where everyone will get their 3 minutes, and they'll be able to take notes and stuff like that.
And then, just for a point of clarification, then after the publics have commented, if you're and your team would not mind just taking notes, because I don't want after each person from the public has commented, then to come back up and answer that, and then go again and again.
Sure.
So if you wouldn't mind taking some notes as the questions from the public come. And then at the end, when we close the public portion, or there's no one else that wants to speak, then you'll come forward and answer the questions. Would that be all right with you? Just for
Sure.
a point of order. Okay.
Happy to help.
All right. Okay. So that'll be how we proceed. So I'll go ahead at this time and open it to the board for questions of the applicant. Pamela.
Thank you. So what restrictive covenants are you asking us to consider here? There's quite a few for that area over there. And I know there's 100 acres over there that's undevelopable. At least that's what was told to us the last time we addressed this issue. It's what's changed.
So, who can answer what exactly we're seeking the development standards for? Some of the land, about, I'm going to say roughly, I'm looking at Richard, 500 acres, will not be sold of the total 2,500 acres.
Because
About
that was the
500
property
will not be
that
sold.
cannot be sold, in other words, because of environmental concerns and restrictions.
Combination environmental concerns.
And the switch.
And where the substations are, the switches are, and the transmission lines. That line will not be sold. but of the, again, we haven't had the final number, but approximately of the 2,500 acres, 2,000 acres will be sold for development.
And 500 retained with
500 will be
restrictive
retained,
covenants.
right, by
and
the-
the 2,000 do not have restrictive covenants. That would be, or do they?
Let me ask Richard.
And I think that's what Pamela wants to know is,
Right,
is
because I
if we separate
understand
this
a lot
out.
of that land has restrictions.
Please, if you can, come to the podium because it's recorded so that way they can hear your answers because it may not pick it up.
Yeah, that's correct. The 2,500 acres has two land use restrictions. One is pumping of water, and the other is storage of water. And that's on and will stay on all 2,500 acres.
So what restrictions are you asking for then? To be,
Which waiver? The waiver is for off-site improvement. It's a easement. And-
you
You
need to
speak a little louder, please. I'm sorry we can't hear you.
Yeah, it was from the county planning to require road dedications, mostly at the corner, at the bend of Casino Drive.
Of
Okay,
Big
so-
Bend and Casino Drive.
Correct.
The ultimate dedication of the roads and the decisions on that will be made, but will be made in conjunction with the developer who purchases the
And
land.
that'll be submitted through major plans.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
development
they
through
will.
Clark County.
Again, we just didn't want
So we'll
to.
see that again.
Yeah, you will see that again as part of the submittal of the plans.
Yeah, and the main reason for the waiver is if we were going to go through the dedication, one of our partners, one of our co-owners, which is the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, has an extremely long process. And that if we go through the dedication process, it'll shoot us to 18 to 24 months down that road to get that dedication done. So that's why, in the end, the dedication will come with the new buyer. But if we have to do it now before we sell, we have to add a year and a half or 2 years on
To
this
being in
process.
escrow, in
Yeah.
other words. Okay.
Before we even get to that.
Okay, so Bob, I mean, maybe on behalf of the audience and maybe on the behalf of me, so I'm not the brightest person in the world, so can you paint a picture for me? Because I think that's kind of what we all kind of need to do is visualize what it is that you're doing, whether it's on the maps or in the paperwork that you've given me and that Tammy may have, of what it is you're breaking off and where these restrictions are going to be, because I just need a little help in understanding that. And I think the audience, it'll help them too. That's an overlay of the 2,500 acres, okay? Basically, if you can just kind of, outline that for us.
Here's the corner, here's the intersection of Eagles Highway.
Okay.
So here's the 500 feet.
We're just going to give you a microphone just a moment.
So this section here is the transmission lines coming down. Here's substation number
Okay,
one.
I'm sorry, I missed the orientation again. I'm not sure if our
Right here
audience
at
did.
this intersection is
Of
Needles Highway
and-
Bruce Woodbury.
And Bruce Woodbury, thank you.
This is Bruce Woodbury. And here's the transmission lines coming into the property.
Correct.
Here's the property line right here. This is the transmission lines. This is substation number 1. This is substation number 2. And this is the Ash Canyon, the place where we have the fly ash
Correct.
buried. And then this is access. So this part here is what is being retained by the co-owners.
Okay, so that, the restrictive covenants, everything will stay on that piece, as well as the whole 2,500 acres. That's being retained. What you're here with us today is to break that apart on the map for sale to a new owner.
To sell the rest of
The circumference, or the area that goes around it,
this area and then this area here.
and that small section there. Okay, does that help the board? Maybe the audience too?
okay, so you're seeking
Pam?
a waiver for the roadway, correct?
There's the planning commission had a requirement
Planning Commission had a requirement, okay.
to dedicate a portion of property road down here towards the bottom of Casino Drive. I believe there's another dedication along here, and that's what we're trying to get a waiver for.
Okay, you're trying to get a waiver for those. And were those dedications for right-of-way, easement, utilities? What were they for?
I
Do you
think
recall?
that road is on Edison property currently, and it needs to become county property.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it's something that needs to be corrected eventually anyway.
So are they going to dedicate that part of the road back to the property or?
Back to the county.
To the county.
Okay,
Yeah.
back to the county.
Okay, on a call a point of order, do we indeed know that that is something that will come later, or in action or a ruling from us today? Does that obligate the new buyer to make that dedication?
That had actually, as the applicants, I know you probably have worked with zoning and planning on their determination. I would assume that it would come at the second time.
Through planning and review when
Correct.
they submit the development plan with offsites and
Yes.
Okay.
But I want to just verify. I know that they've had several meetings with county staff.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I just don't want to obligate them to not give it
Yeah,
to
and
the
it
county.
doesn't say on the
Right.
plans
Yeah,
who it
okay.
belongs
Yeah.
to.
So please, if you can clarify that for us.
Yeah, actually,
That process.
here comes Keith. These are
Okay, yes.
broker.
Keith has been here many times before us.
Thank you. So specifically, the agreement that the developer will be making with the county will be addressing what type of developments are involved, what type of traffic patterns and the impact on the site. And so those dedications may be adjusted by virtue of how much traffic is going to occur here. That's the whole process of the major. So to make a dedication today before you have all that detail is cart before the horse. So the appropriate time for, the county is going to, and that'll be public works, it'll be zoning, it'll be the full gamut of the county's professional staff to look at what is planned and what's required as a consequence. So there may be dedications, there may be areas for additional fire protection, police protection. There are all kinds of services that may be involved. So it's almost impossible for the current owners to really understand what is to be dedicated by virtue of a plan they don't even know. So the appropriate people for these detailed questions, including the staff's review, is going to be the developer.
And just another thing to clarify for the board and for the audience. So in any ruling we do here today, it has a 2-year time frame on it. So if work does not commence, if major plans are not submitted, and I would assume the item come back before this board, anything that we grant, any waiver of development standards today would expire in 2 years. And they would have to come back to this board, show progress for it to be picked up and continued beyond that period of time.
That's correct.
At least in the staff recommendations, I've also seen that. And are you and the new purchaser agreeable to staff recommendations as you've reviewed them?
Absolutely. This is a process to hopefully get them involved in the details, and we've just got to define what it is they're buying. And so that's really what we're asking today.
So then the other question, just from the standpoint, I think the last time you were before us, I get confused because I've been here a long time. So I think maybe 2017, 2018 timeframe. And in that interim, there has been an overlay placed on that property in mixed use development, where before the current zoning is what, M3, and then moved, I think, in 2000 to M2. And that, I think, is reflected in staff recommendations as well, as far as Title 30 being rewritten and an overlay of mixed-use development, which is residential, retail, and a lot of, because that is the center of our little town in many, many ways. So is the new purchaser aware of that? Because it is clearly defined in staff recommendations that they would have to comply with that.
They're fully informed, and they're familiar with the county. They follow this process, so they've been in lockstep with the whole transition. There are going to be restrictions based on water uses, so there will be areas that really aren't conducive to residential, and they're fully aware of all of that.
Okay.
Okay, and then
Pam.
what was the second waiver you were looking for besides deviation of the road?
You need to use the microphone.
Yep, sorry.
I believe it was had to do with easements that were tied to the development, like curbs and gutter and other items that were really tied to development. That's what we were saying. Can we divert this or put it off until a buyer that has the property, that's actually has plans to develop the property? That's the more appropriate time for that to come up.
So you're saying the waiver is roadway dedication, at least what we have written here, roadway dedication and restrictive covenant for a decommissioned electrical generating station. So you're saying off-sites are part of that?
That is correct, Board.
Okay. Okay. So you just don't want to do that. It makes sense not to do the off-sites until you have a buyer and they know how they're going to develop it. That type of stuff would be remediated through major plans review. And you have 2 years, if we rule to approve it, you have 2 years to make these, bring this to fruition.
That's an
or you
accurate,
have to come back
that's an
to
accurate
us.
statement, Chair.
Okay.
NAC and NRS are very specific in terms of the requirements for a minor and major subdivision map, this being a minor subdivision map, 4 parcels or less. And the intent is to retain the land that is emburdened either with facilities and improvements or the ash pit where it's a potential hazard. And then land that is developable to be freed up for purchase and then re-subdivision through a major map that has much more restrictive requirements, and it has dedications for the purpose of the public welfare, improving the roads, widening, et cetera, creating easements within those public dedications for utilities and other improvements to accommodate the development of it and the subdivision of it, in that case, the division of the land for sale, lease, or rent.
Okay. So one other question, because whatever we would do here today has a duration of 24 months. There was a question the gentleman from Edison had said, or a comment you had said, that was you definitely have to go through the process with the City of Los Angeles or Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and that is an 18 to 24 month process. So would that affect, I mean, something we do here today, it gets approved on 5/17, then you can have up to 24 months for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to rule or approve it?
Actually, that time frame was in reference to if we were to do the road dedications and the easements, the offsite improvement easements. If we're required to do that, DWP has that type of time frame for their approval to get those road dedications done.
I see. So you're saying if we approve it today, then that 18 to 24 month process would be in conjunction with what they're submitting to the county, so that timeline would run concurrent, and it would also be submitted through major plans.
Actually, we wouldn't be here for the asking for the waiver if we were going to go through that process and just add 2 years to that process. But by asking for this waiver, we can cut down that time frame and get to a buyer.
Okay. All right. Thank you. More questions from the board? Can I stir some up?
Just to clear something.
Please.
So to get the waiver today eliminates you having to wait for the other 18, 24 months.
Correct. Yeah, we're trying to get to a point where we can subdivide it, sell it, get it to the buyer so they can develop it and do those offsite improvements and road dedication. But we can't even get to that point yet.
Without getting this resolved?
Right.
Okay.
Or going through the 2 year period of the process.
So this would expedite things?
Yeah.
Okay. Herm, you had a question? Our attorney on the board.
Yeah, with regard to the existing limitations on water use, those will carry over and apply to the ultimate purchaser.
Yes.
I think probably you're aware, if not aware, of the fact that not too far from this ground is a high-capacity well and a storage tank. Does the prohibition apply to that well and that tank?
According to the state, it was the requirement for us to put those covenants on this property where they have the control to require us to do that. And it's, I think the main reason, this is a little bit out of my area expertise, but the river comes along here, right? Roughly in the bend. And I think the area shows something with dissolved solids and I can't remember what they called it, some ancient waterways that exist through this area based on dissolved solids. So had to do something with if we had this water storage or water extraction on this property, it could reactivate or possibly make the river want to go straight across. So that's why the state had us put those restrictions on this property here because of the bend.
Well, that's interesting, but it doesn't answer my question.
His question is basically, because we can't take wells and draw water from this particular property, there is a large capacity well and tank that is near the location. Has that been tested and has that been shown to be clear? Herm, am I encapsulating it correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
That was the question.
I know my
And
board's
is that, who has that water well? Is that with one of the local water agencies? Or?
It would be Big Bend or Las Vegas Valley
they
Water
would not
District
be,
now.
So that well would not be subject to the restrictions that are on this property.
And that well would be part of our water district testing, I would assume.
So the ultimate purchaser of that, who is subdividing and ostensibly doing it with houses and lots, could represent to the purchaser of a house and a lot that water is available from the source that we're talking about, right?
Again, that would be a question. The developer would have to go through and get all the water rights, the water permissions to use everything, and that would be the developer would be responsible for doing that.
Typically, in a subdivision, like when they built D.R. Horton, they had to go in with CenturyLink and PG&E, or not PG&E, Southwest Gas, and go in with Water District to run lines into the subdivisions. I know, we were somewhat involved in that process. The board was fiber optic lines and stuff like that. So I think the water source would more than likely be our water district, and through major plans, you would include the plans for connecting into any type of commercial or residential or industrial. Am I correct?
Yeah. Again, all those details will be the responsibility of the purchaser and the developer of the property.
We just there would be no drawing of water across the entire 2,500 acres, and it would be any development there's going to be connected to our water district as it exists currently today, and it would be something to put in that infrastructure, which they do, because then they get people buying their water that they can meter and charge, and that's a revenue model for them.
Correct. Yeah, and before when we were shutting down the plant and we shut down the river pump house, that was our intention, was to use municipal water for the plant.
And you have been using that since?
We actually shut down and we didn't reactivate. We didn't
so
have any use.
You're not supplying water to the site now?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. But that was our intention, to use municipal water.
Just for a point of clarification, on the application for the waiver, it was represented that this was being done by Southern Cal Edison in the city of Los Angeles. Later in the various documents, it's represented that the owner of the property is SCE company et al., meaning others. What's SCE?
Southern California Edison.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and we're the majority owner.
Okay.
So yeah, Nevada Energy is also not listed. For some reason, it's not listed on that. It just says LADWP and Edison. But
And then in the same documentation, it identifies the owner as Richard.
representative.
Fujikawa?
That's me. Yeah.
That's you.
Yeah. Not the owner, but
But
yeah,
you aren't the owner.
representative. Representative of the owner, of the majority owner, Southern California Edison.
Okay.
Not as a stockholder, just as an employee. Am I correct? Okay.
Are we looking at one buyer, or is this one buyer going to purchase it and then sub it out?
We're looking at one buyer. The co-owners are selling to one purchaser. But
So we'll have one buyer, one developer of
Yeah.
the 2,000 acres.
yes,
Well, that's not set in stone, so
Yeah,
they can still subdivide.
yeah, they still can. And I don't think we can, what we're able to do here today can't
No.
negate that.
Can't
We will
address
see
it,
it
no.
back before us as each, section develops, but it's not something we can.
That might be a local buyer who's a phoneaholic.
Sir?
Board, the state laws prohibit subdividing a parcel map for another parcel map's purpose. So in order to subdivide this parcel map is what this is, a minor subdivision, can be subdivided further with a major subdivision map, which has much more onerous requirements and responsibilities to the developer owners, as opposed to taking these 4 parcels, the 2 that are going to be intended to be sold, and then subdividing those into 4 or smaller. So that's not possible under Nevada state law. So it's prohibitive of that development and then sell and develop and sell, or buy, sell, and keep subdividing that way with multiple different owners. It encourages larger developments through a single source or organization.
And therefore, the restrictions are much less as a major parcel, as opposed to it being rewritten as as a minor parcel.
Correct.
Versus a major parcel. It's going to take much more scrutiny, much more higher development standards. So it behooves the new owner to take it as a minor parcel, which is more vast, and develop that. Am I correct?
The
Or did I
intent of
flip
the
it?
minor subdivision is to expedite the process because of the length and duration of the review of a major subdivision map, and because the intent is not to divide this into multiple parcels, that the current owners are not intending to divide this off into individual lots or parcels for development as per se to dispose of the property and then let another organization or entity pursue the development with the more onerous and more responsible major subdivision map. So it won't go minor to minor to minor and be less restrictive. It goes from minor subdivision map, which we're proposing, to a major subdivision map, which is more restrictive and more protective of the community.
Okay. All right. Any more questions from the board? Okay. Seeing no more questions from the board, I will ask you gentlemen to please take a seat and take some notes. What I'm going to do now is open it to the public, and they will have 3 minutes to speak. If you will please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and spell your last name. Please let us know what you'd like to say, and then hopefully our applicants will be able to answer them at the end of the public comment section. Please.
Martin Knaus, Knauss, 3826 Duke of Earl Court, Laughlin, Nevada, representing the Laughlin Economic Development Corporation. The Laughlin Economic Development Corporation mission is to create and implement a collaborative venture among civic and business leaders in the town of Laughlin to promote the health, welfare, and quality of life for the residents of Laughlin through economic development. In that light, we asked the Laughlin Town Advisory Board to support this land use application made by Southern California Edison, Nevada Energy, and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. This applies to the 2,500-acre Mojave Generating Station. LEDC has been a long-standing proponent of the subdivision and sale of the properties involved to further the growth of Laughlin. We hope to soon meet the project developer and prepare for the upcoming major project review by comprehensive planning. We thank the entire team at Clark County Public Works for their assistance, as we have been both waiting for this time since the plant's decommissioning in 2005. Additionally, we are one step closer to the 2 major transportation needs of Laughlin, the Casino Drive SID, and then addressing the Bruce Woodbury Parkway SID from Needles Highway to Casino Drive. We also look forward to the Clark County Regional Flood Control District's Hyco Springs Diversion Flood Project, which addresses our last remaining major alluvial fan, Bridge Canyon Wash. This movement, as slight as it is exciting for our community, that soon we will have someone whom the community can confer with on a myriad of regional development, social, and educational issues before us all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on today's agenda item or has a comment or question that the applicant can answer? Please state your name and address. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jenny Smith, SMITH, 2830 La Palma Drive, Laughlin, Nevada. And I have been actually watching this property for 7 years because it's my backyard. So my concern especially is that there isn't a solar field go in or something that would absolutely destroy the value of the homes. I have no idea. 2 weeks ago when I was here and asked, I was told that the property wasn't sold. So I kind of heard rumors that there was a buyer. But anyway, will the developer, whoever it may be, have to disclose what they're going to do prior to developing? And basically, I'm just trying to protect our property for the people that live in the neighborhood. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and spell your last name.
Hello, my name is David Martin, and I'm currently residing with the Cranes at 2888 Biscaya Drive. And we have a couple questions. One thing was, I just heard you say earlier that you had 48 hours to call if you had trouble hearing the meeting or speaking at the meeting or something. But we didn't get this notice until after 1:30 yesterday at the mailboxes about this meeting for the electric company. So I think there should be an earlier time that they should have to send this information out at least a month in advance, because people go in and out and people leave for a week or two around here during the summer and stuff. And like I said, we just got this notice in our mailbox yesterday after 1:30 because that's what time they delivered the mail. So we didn't know anything about this meeting, and they were kind of unaware of what was happening. So they asked me if I would come on their behalf to see what was happening with the property. So that's one of the concerns. One, you could be just a little bit louder, but that would help. But otherwise, I think it's pretty good. But, like I said, I don't really know. And the other question I have is, in the 1970s, late 70s, I lived in Escondido, which I still own a home down there, unfortunately. And the city tried to annex some property next to us because they wanted to let a church annex into the city so that they could put on our property tax rolls a $300,000 storm drain that the church needed to expand their property to put a high school in. And so they were told at the time that California has a law that was passed by Edmund G. Brown, I guess it is, Governor Brown, 1952. I'm not that old, so I don't know, but it says something that you're not allowed, if you own property in California, the city is not allowed to expand unless it touches their boundaries already. So how the city of Los Angeles got property over here, I have no idea. They must own a long strip of land that goes all the way down to their city. Because there is a state and a federal law that says they can't just willy-nilly take your property, because our city wanted to take over Lawrence Welks because they built it up nice, and they said, oh yeah, let's take Lawrence Welks over. Well, they can't do it because they don't own land going all the way to Lawrence Welks. So, I don't know how this group was allowed to do this, but they did. So anyways, that's all I have to say, but thank you.
All right.
Like
Thank
I said,
you.
for letting me speak. And, I am staying here for long term, and I eventually would love to move here. I do like it here, but unfortunately, I got a house down there I got to unload.
I understand.
And I've got problems with.
I understand. So just to address a couple of things, because those weren't necessarily of the applicant, you can go ahead and sit down. I'm just going to address a couple of things. So first and foremost, our agendas are posted a week in advance of any meeting that we have. So if you wanted to maybe set and take a look at the agendas that come out, usually the second and fourth Tuesday of the month are our meetings, and this was on that agenda at that time. So that would have given a week earlier, but I do understand that there were public notices that were sent out. And then in addition, and the individuals, if there's some here from Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, I believe it dealt with the Colorado River and water rights that went back into the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. And so that is indeed how they ended up with, the power station, hydroelectric and stuff. So that goes back even further than 1952. I believe it was the 1920s, but I'm not sure.
So just answering questions. First, I'd like to thank the Economic Development Organization for their support. Again, I know the developer looks forward to working with them as well as the community of Laughlin to envision this property and develop this property. And as far as the second question, yes, I mean, as we've talked about, the property owner will come through, share their plans, and then all those plans will have to be approved by your organization as well as the county.
Okay, I just, I'm not sure everyone has been heard today, so
I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. I was just commenting because we actually don't have anyone, yeah. So I still think there's going to be more questions, so we'll keep going, please. No problem.
Well, I was going to mention the one thing. My name is Greg Caudle, 3267 Del Monte, full-time resident. And one thing was the card coming yesterday in the mail for the people. There's people that are maybe getting it today in the mail when they get home at 3 o'clock and the meeting's already done and over. It seems like this is being pushed through. Somebody that's so happy to be helping out with the community and so happy to help Laughlin won't identify himself, won't let anything go through. LA's just going to roll over on their back and say, okay, for 24 months, we got a notice from the Laughlin County Board. We got to forget all of our planning and zoning for 24 months because what you guys would agree to, I doubt it. I think there's going to be more stuff like this brought up with LA later on. Why this is all such a secret thing and the developer's such a secret thing, I can understand he may not want to give all of his plans, but is this residential? Is this a solar project? Is this commercial? Somewhat a little hint rather than us approving something that we have absolutely no idea to. This property backs up to the Memorial Park, one of our beautiful parks here. It backs up to a mid-grade school, middle school. It backs up to the water park, all the residents that live in there. Casino Drive's a small road to have any access coming there with the highs and lows, with the way the hills are on the roads. You know that even at night it's unlit. It's a rough road right now. I mean, there's a lot of questions here to just give a stamp of approval on this without knowing at all, not even a hint of what this is going to be approved for. Just to say, okay, yeah, we think it's a good idea. We've got a shell of a building over there, a hotel. Someone years ago, not saying you guys, must have thought it was a hell of a great idea to build it. And now it's, hey, what's that frame of a building? What kind of hotel are they going to build? Well, it's just a frame of a building that's abandoned. So would this turn into this type of development here if, say, Los Angeles puts a kibosh on the whole thing and says, we own this property and we're not going to do it? Does Los Angeles know what this is even going to be with the developer? Thanks for listening to me, and that's all the questions I have right now.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. If there's questions I can answer that wouldn't necessarily be of the applicant, I'm going to. So Greg, let me help you just a little bit with the process, because if you don't know it, I've been here 21 years, so it took me a long time to know it. So what we have done since this property's been vacant since 2005, or has been vacated and decommissioned in 2005. And in 2017, Clark County, members of this board at that time went and created what's called a mixed-use development overlay for that full 2,500 acres. So that dictates the future of how that land can be developed and what it can be used for. When I asked the applicants earlier, are you aware that what it's currently zoned for, which is industrial M2, has been changed in the overlay to a mixed-use development. Now, what you get with a mixed-use development, or can get, you can get parks, green space, retail, you can get government-assisted housing, affordable housing, residential properties, schools, fire department. So all of that comes under mixed-use development, as well as retail, commercial, industrial. So because that has already been put in place as the land plan and the future of that property, any purchaser is obligated to adhere to that. And that's even in our staff recommendations, because I think this board would more than likely make a recommendation that the applicant make approval with acceptance of staff recommendations. So that does obligate them, and that goes forward to the Board of County Commissioners. And further, once they start the process, I can't guarantee Los Angeles Department of Water and Power won't delay things or won't stop it. We can't legislate that. But what I can say is there's an entire process through Clark County that they would have to go through in major development. They would have to submit plans through major planning, and then a lot of that, if there were any additional waivers or anything that didn't conform to what we have already set back in 2017 as the overlay for the land, they would have to come back before this board, and we would hear it again. I can tell you, I'll probably still be here 21 years and counting. And I remember the individuals and the players. I've met with them before, and they know me. So well, those were really questions of the applicant. I'm just kind of trying to tell you, we do have a process in place to kind of mitigate that from happening, because it matters to us. This is smack dab right in the center of our community, and how it develops is important to us. But again, we really want the growth as well, but we won't approve anything that isn't going to benefit the residents here. Okay, so I just want to address that to you, Greg, so that you can understand the process that is already law and established and will happen. Okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else from the public that wanted to make a statement on this agenda item? Sir, you're looking like you want to. No? Okay. All right. Okay.
Following up on the, this property has been dormant for, what?
2005.
15 to 18 years. And in the material attached to the agenda that I received, some of which I had a great deal of difficulty sorting out the materiality of that to the application. But in the process, there seemed to be a great deal of urgency from the current ownership of saying, we need to have this approved now. Because if it isn't, then there's going to be a delay of 12 to 18 months or something of that nature. Which suggests to me that there's a political overtone to this whole process. And I think that we ought to give it some consideration. I'm sure there's no other reason. It's been sitting that long, and suddenly, there is this thrust to get this approved and get it done. And I just think that there's a political overtone that's probably not to the benefit of all of the population of Laughlin.
Okay, Herm, so my question then would be, at least the way I see it, I mean, this is really in its infancy at this point. If something doesn't happen within 2 years, so anything we rule on or do today, within 2 years, if it doesn't come to fruition, they have to come back to us for an extension of time, and those always do happen. So my question is, what do you think is the underlying risk in that?
I think the underlying risk is there is no underlying risk other than in approving that the waiver be granted at this point in time. And I think that we ought to deliberate for a longer period of time before the waiver is granted.
And I'm in agreement with Herm. I think this is a rush. It wasn't clearly stated. And I still have some questions about the property and its environmental concerns that have not been addressed. And I know there are some environmental concerns with the rest of that property, especially with the restricted water use and the development of that property, once they start digging, what are they gonna be throwing up into the air? Now, I'm truly concerned about those environmental restrictions that were overlaid, and I was on the board at that time when we discussed all of this. And I'm with Herm that I think this is a rush to judgment without having, I would like to see the copies of all the paperwork that lists all the restrictions on this land, and I want to see the full writing on what it states for that. And I think Herm is probably in agreement with me. Him from his legal background of us reviewing that, so we're not making decisions rashly here.
Okay, so then,
I agree. I would make a motion, Madam Chairman,
okay.
that we table consideration.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, so I'm going to hold off on those motions. We can remake them, but I haven't finished out the public section, guys. So as far as how we're supposed to proceed, we were at the public comment and then we detoured and came back to the board. So what I want to do is we can certainly make those motions, but I want to finish with the public comment, let the applicants come up and answer, any type of questions or concerns that you all have voiced too, possibly, and then we can, bring it back to the board for a vote. So at this point, I'm going to continue to ask, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this comment? And if so, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Okay? All right. Okay, you've been up once, but okay.
Oh, can I not do it again?
I don't think we've ever had that, but go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're welcome to. We love the public input. We really do. It's important.
Jenny Smith, SMITH, 2830 La Palma Drive, Laughlin, Nevada. So I'm curious as to what the restrictive covenants are as well, where I can read them. Not just water, but that's all I would like to see
Okay, great.
as well.
And that'll be a good question for them to answer because I can't answer that one. So, okay. So anyone else in the public have any comment? Okay. So at this time, I'll go ahead and close the public comment section on this agenda item, and I will ask our applicant board to please respond to some of the concerns from the public and also from this board.
Thank you. And again, I'll have Keith address some of the details. But again, thank you. Thank you. Keith can answer some of the details. But again, we're not, the step here today is not approving the use of the land. It's just approving us to do the administrative work behind the scenes with the county so that the sale of the land can proceed and that the developer can come in and talk about all of the uses, intended uses of the land, as well as reviewing all of the restrictions of the land that are on the land and discussing that as part of their development agreement. And with that, I'll Keith answer some more questions.
Thanks, Bob. So there's a variety of questions that I've listed here. As far as solar use on the
Keith, if you just give your name for the record
Keith
again,
Spencer,
please.
Keith Spencer, CBRE, representing the owners in this sale. Solar use has been talked about in a variety of meetings, and my comment previously was, the solar fields that you see going up and down the El Dorado Valley, there's nothing like that envisioned in any of the discussions with any buyers. But what I've also told you in the past is, if you ever have an opportunity to go to Las Vegas and if you ever go to IKEA, that entire building is a solar field. You'd never know it. That's just the future. That's where we are. You live in a very rich environment here for solar power. I wouldn't rule out solar being established on that property, but it'll be in a way that is, I think, very palatable. So that's one issue. No plans for solar fields of any kind, but I would just say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater simply because you live in a very rich environment for that
Keith, I'm just going to add a little bit to that for Mrs. Smith, just so she's aware. I think this board has approved in the last couple of meetings 2 10,000-acre solar parks that are going to go in the Southland area. So I know Ms. Smith did ask about that, and that was one of the things that, we didn't necessarily want solar fields right in the middle of the town, but we do have 2 10,000-acre parks, solar parks that are going towards the south end. So I just want to, because you're trying to address that, but I just didn't know she was at the meetings that we've done that recently. So just to add that. But I do appreciate that concept of palatable solar. I didn't know IKEA was that either, so
Yeah.
that's interesting.
So the other issue is was talk about delaying the development. Is this a ploy to delay development? This is actually defining the property so that you can get a legal description of the property that will be conveyed in the sale. That's really what we're asking for. And everything that is going to be a dedication, everything that's going to be specific about what are you going to do here, that's the developer that's going to come before you. The current ownership are not developers. And some of the question was, can this be resold? Very definitely it'll be resold in the same way that Howard Hughes has done Summerlin. And any master plan developer, what they do is they put the plan together, and then they go to specific experts, whether you're a home builder or whether you're a retail shopping center developer. Those are the people that they're going to sell to because they're experts in that field. What the master plan developer, what we are trying to put the ball in the hands of is somebody that takes and looks at everybody's input. The town, their demand from buyers, what does the country need? What does Laughlin need? What's going to fit best? And you've got all sorts of new infrastructure. You've got the second bridge coming in. You've got all this green energy coming in. So there's so many variables changing by the day. The developer has no motivation to delay this. They want to be in front of you. They'd like to be in front of you 2 years ago, but we couldn't define what it is they're buying until this is done. And unfortunately, the way Nevada and Clark County's process works, we're actually having to ask for waivers of the conditions to create these maps because this isn't the right body to make those choices of where is a road coming into the property, where is a sewer line, where is a water line, and all of those infrastructure elements, water, sewer, power, you have to go to every provider, say I'm putting in 200 homes here, I'm putting in 100,000 square feet of retail here, and that's all analyzed. Well, then you're going to need this much water, you're going to need this much power. Every time one of those developments comes through, a specific will serve is granted. So there's no blanket automatic, you have rights to 2,000 acres of utilities. It's every specific use is analyzed. And that's why there's a lot of details that this group can't even imagine. It's the master plan developer and the specific users that will be part of your community that you're going to have a chance to review and approve. But this is really just putting the ball in their hands. That's all we're doing. We're defining the real estate that they're buying.
And Keith, just to address, because this was your question, and so, they had requested like a list of all of, and I believe it came from our public too, of all of the restrictive covenants for development on the land. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you have delineated as staying with the current ownership, the utility companies, and the other acres of 2,000, the restrictions are different. The only restriction, all of them contain the overall restriction of no, groundwater and no adding water or taking water. But there are additional biohazard requirements on the property that indeed you guys are keeping and not. So that's the one with the big list of issues, and you guys know you can't unload that. So you're hanging on to that, obviously.
To that specific issue, and when you're asking, I'd like to read that, there are reams of Nevada Department of Environmental Protection. This property has been microanalyzed, And what Richard was referring to was the eastern half of this property has general restrictions because what they suggested was where the Colorado River is, where ancient flows used to be, we want to limit, as an example, no pools, no golf courses, nothing with a body of water that can accelerate the movement of that ash into the Colorado River. Those are going to remain. That material, there are reams of materials. I had to do that research myself, go to the environmental protection. We've got that, and it's voluminous. So it's there, it's public record. It has nothing to do with the developer. They're fully aware of it. They know that they're locked in place. Those aren't restrictions that they're going to get waivers on. That's not what's being asked for as a waiver. That remains in perpetuity, as far as I can see, because of the nature of this property and how it's related to the Colorado River. That's more important than any development. So that's locked into place. And if you want to read that, it's there. It's public information. The developer has nothing to do with that, but they will abide by it.
Okay, and were there any other questions that you guys took notes with to address? Okay. All right. Seeing that, I'll go ahead and move the discussion back to the board. If you guys would have anything, like I said, you started out a motion, but I don't know if that motion is necessarily to extend this, delay this, table this, or specifically what it is that you wanted to do, or if there's, Kathleen, if there's any information you want to add.
Table it indefinitely.
Well, I don't think we can. That's not an option in Robert's rules, is to table it.
I think one of our biggest concerns with the public and with the board is, what is the big secrecy of who the buyer is? And why do we have to push through this today for the buyer to make a decision on what they're going to do going forward?
I agree with Kathleen and with Herm on that as well. And maybe for me here, I don't particularly care for the wording of this because it is ambiguous at best. And so I'm leaning more until there's a little more information, and then I will do research.
Okay.
Believe me, I've read reams and reams and reams.
So my question would be to the board: do we think that we entertain a motion to bring this item back before us?
Yes.
In our regularly scheduled May meeting, or do we want to do a special call?
I think it should go into a regular meeting where the public at large can comment on this, and hearing from several that they didn't get enough notice on this.
Okay, so my
think that's
question,
a prudent thing to do.
Okay, so do we think, because typically we have our first meeting, which is only in a couple of weeks, it's not far. So that's not a lot of time for us to do the work and for them to be able to answer the questions that they've had, because this will be recorded and hopefully they'll get a copy of it so that it can be addressed. So my question is, would we want to make a motion for a special call meeting, which is which would be the secondary meeting? Is that something that the board would entertain, that these questions could be addressed? I cannot say, because typically in business, there might be an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement pertaining to the owner, and I don't know if these individuals can disclose that to us, so that may not be something that can happen.
Well, I don't think that it ought to be reconsidered at the earliest.
Okay, so then the other option would be to make a motion to disapprove. In other words, it would be to make a motion to disapprove. If we don't want to hear it before us, this board, in other words, this is an action item for us today. We can't table indefinitely. That doesn't work in Robert's rules. So the question is, we either approve it or set a special call meeting, or we disapprove. These are our options. And so if you guys would like to discuss those, which you would like to do.
Well, my opinion has always been and always will be that the people of Laughlin should have a right to speak to any matter that comes before this board. And so I would like to see another opportunity for our
constituents
to comment on this.
Okay, so let
and
me
then
ask.
be able to make a prudent decision.
Okay, and
That
so
would be a special
staff,
call.
so staff, can you chime in on that?
Sure,
What would
yeah.
be our options as far as special call?
So today,
And the public notifications, because some of our constituencies are saying they just got the notices today.
And
I
I wanna-
know there is a legal definition of
Yeah.
when those have to be mailed.
and I believe those are the applicant had sent those out, right? Those are from, based on the whole process, or the Clark
Or
County?
is that- It's typically Clark County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because ours was posted correctly and everything. We posted here and all that. We apologize that people only got it today. We can look in to see why county staff might have had it arrive late or what happened with
Yeah,
that. so.
the gentleman there has one.
Okay.
That is the Clark County
Yep,
mailing,
yep. So
but
that
public,
comes from Clark
public
County.
meeting.
So
Yes.
that's different than us posting the agenda. We can check with that
Right.
agency to find out why. Today you would have to make a decision either to approve or deny. Based on the questions, there is another opportunity on the May 17th at the Planning Commission to speak and have those questions answered as well. So that provides an opportunity, but unfortunately, like the chair said, we won't be able to table it. I would say today's either
Oh,
approved
because
or
it's
denied.
going forward on the consent agenda on the 17th.
Yeah, so that does give another opportunity to, I know it is in the Las Vegas office, however, there is an opportunity to do another discussion with it there. And Tammy can correct me if I'm.
Yeah, I just needed a little bit of clarification.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, sir. I can't take the question now. I'm sorry. Okay, so at this point, we've been told we either, from a point of order, we either approve it or disapprove it.
Okay.
And like I said, because it is going forward on consent agenda on 5/17 to the Board of County Commissioners. So I think our decision here is pretty simple. So I'll go ahead and entertain a motion at this time. Who would like to give me a motion?
I make the motion that we disapprove.
Okay, so I have a motion for disapproval. Do
Second.
I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Third, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. All right, so you have our decision 3-1 for disapproval. Okay. I'd like to thank the applicants in coming before us today. So now we'll move forward on general business. We have no items. And then comments by the general public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public about matters relevant to the board's jurisdiction will be held. No vote may be taken on a matter not listed on the posted agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Please step up to the speaker's podium, state your name and address, and spell your last name for the record. If any member of the board wishes to extend the length of a presentation, this will be done by the chairperson or board by majority vote. So do we have anyone that would like to speak in the public comment section? And this is about items that are not today, or not here today on this agenda. Gentlemen, if you had a question or something to say, this would be your time to do that. Okay? I see. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. So seeing no input from the general public, our next meeting date is scheduled for May 10th of 2022 here in this office. And I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.